Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss the shocking, but I suppose not at all surprising news, that Rishi Sunak has been rewarding water companies who've been dumping untreated sewage in our waterways with tax breaks to the tune of almost £100 million. In fact, several water companies paid no tax at all last year, but still managed to pay out dividends apparently. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel. So on a day when for the first time in history both junior and senior doctors have been striking together, I am minded to point out that a government which is claiming that it cannot afford to maintain the real terms pay of vital public sector workers like NHS medics, they'd better make sure that they are spending tax revenues wisely. I don't want to see any waste. Earlier this week, Rishi Sunak, in his somewhat dubious wisdom, decided to let private house builders off with £140 million worth of anti-pollution costs, and that the bill will now be transferred to the taxpayer instead. Now we learn that water companies have been given tax breaks of about £100 million last year collectively. In fact, in the case of 10 water companies, no tax paid at all last year. They raked in the profits, they dumped untreated sewage in order to make more profits, and they paid no tax. In one case, pointed out in the Telegraph, Northumbrian Water, they were given the largest tax break, £22 million rebate, although in the article they deny it, but at the end of the day, this is the Telegraph, it's a Tory paper. If they're reporting this, then it is the case. £22 million tax rebate, yet they paid out £105 million in dividends. So what did they need the tax break for? According to the article, it's part of a scheme which Rishi Sunak, as Chancellor, launched in 2021. It was intended to stimulate the economy in the wake of the COVID lockdowns, and it was a rebate worth £130% of investments. Now, in general terms, I'm not opposed to tax breaks on certain types of investment. For example, I supported Labour's tax breaks for solar panel installations on houses. For a tax break to be justified, my attitude, it should fulfil one of two criteria, preferably both, but at least one. First, that the tax break is for investment that benefits the country and its people. So like more renewable energy, for example. Not dumping untreated sewage into rivers. Second, that the tax break ends up generating more money for the Treasury than it costs. Because in the first case, it's worth it because we all get the benefit. In the second, well, it's an investment. So even if as long as it's not harmful investment, like you don't give a tax break for fracking, for example. But as long as it's not harmful, even if it's not beneficial, it doesn't matter because you're given this tax break, you end up generating more taxes as a result of it. You know, we get money out of it. We can then spend on something that does benefit us. That's fine. But I struggle to see the wisdom in this tax rebate for these water companies. What was their investment, for example? If this is supposed to be for investment, what was their investment? They have a history going back decades, right back to privatisation, of not investing. In fact, it's from 2021, when this rebate scheme came in, that their sewage dumping escalated to a whole new level. When challenged about this, they blamed the Victorian infrastructure. But this is bogus for a couple of reasons. First, the point of privatisation, we were told, was supposed to be that, they will modernise this crumbling Victorian infrastructure. Second, this scale of sewage dumping was since we left the single market. We had the Victorian infrastructure for decades before. What we didn't have was anything like this level of dumping. Almost like it had something to do with no longer being subject to EU rules and nothing at all to do with infrastructure. The fact that the dumping is just getting worse indicates that whatever investment these water companies are claiming to have made in order to earn these tax rebates, they have not actually made our water supplies better or cleaner. And consider that the rebate is 130%. That means they not only don't pay tax on whatever they can class as an investment, but the Treasury actually gives them another 30% of the value of our money on top as a special prize. It'd be a bit like if I had this same deal, I could sort of claim all sorts of things as an investment. I'm not going to pay tax on that because I've invested. Can you also give me 30% of what I earned to me as well, please? That's not a sustainable business model for the Treasury to pursue. And it's evident that these water companies have not been investing. Absolutely evident. If they had, we would be seeing improvements by now 2 years later. And because it's so evident that water companies have clearly done nothing to deserve a rebate for investment designed to stimulate the economy, it's equally clear that there must be other companies which have also been given this rebate erroneously as well. Basically, this wasn't a rebate for the purpose of boosting the economy, was it? It was just an excuse for a chancellor who was part of a group directly responsible for the banking collapse in this country to further screw the country's finances by just letting private companies not pay tax. You know, it brought to mind last year's Tory party conference, and Liz Truss, who was Prime Minister at the time, seemed to be giving serious consideration to just letting small and medium-sized businesses ignore all regulations related to running a business. In other words, if you're a small business, the law doesn't apply to you. This is the same level of thinking, only with taxes. Taxes are for struggling workers. They're not for people whose incomes are unearned, because that's what this amounts to. I get that if you invest in stocks and shares, you're risking it. So you want a suitable return for your risk. But it's still not earned in the usual way. Like, you're not working for it. You're not doing anything for it. If you've got a large enough portfolio that someone else manages it for you, you're literally doing nothing for it. You're not producing anything. It's not quite as unearned to the same extent as inheritance tax, where the only work you ever did for that was being the sperm that was a bit faster than the rest. But it's still essentially unearned income. And it's this income which the Tories think deserves not to be taxed. And when you consider that tax breaks often are used to encourage certain behaviours, what does this tell you? Other than the Tories don't want to make work pay at all. They say, you should make work pay. Well, you're not doing, are you? They actively encourage people to aspire to be those who make their money off the backs of others, who don't produce anything themselves. It's completely backwards. If tax breaks are supposed to reward behaviour that the government approves of, then the Tories have made it clear they approve of profit above all considerations. They approve, or at least are neutral to, the dumping of untreated sewage in rivers. But it's also another example of how they're simply not being careful with the tax revenues raised. There's no economic case for giving tax breaks to water companies, even if they weren't polluting our waterways. Like, what's the justification? Water companies didn't have to stop operating during the pandemic. They carried on. People still paid them. The fact that water companies have continued to pay out large dividends demonstrates they did not need help from the Treasury. To allow a private company to pay dividends but zero tax is both abhorrent, but it's also a clear case of government mismanagement. What they actually need is a boot up the arse from DEFRA. It is coming. Labour's policies for water companies are fairly robust and will represent a real wake-up call for them. Put it this way, I would not be surprised to learn that in a couple of years there's a lot of changes of CEOs of water companies as the existing vampires seek easier pickings for their bonuses elsewhere. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. I hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships. And until next time, I'll see you later.